The 70s gave us some of the greatest music ever recorded. But while we all remember the mega hits that still dominate classic rock and oldies stations, there are dozens of incredible songs from that decade that somehow slipped through the cracks. These weren't obscure album cuts that nobody heard. These were actual hits that got radio play and climbed the charts. Here are the top 10 70s songs you forgot were awesome. Number 10, September Girls by Big Star. Big Star is one of those bands that everybody in the music business knows about, but most regular folks have never heard of. Back in 1974, they released this power pop masterpiece, and it should have made them stars. The song had everything going for it. Alex Chilton's vocals had this perfect combination of sweetness and edge. The guitars jangled in that way that would later influence bands like R.E.M. and The Replacements. The melody was absolutely infectious. But Big Star was cursed with terrible luck from the very beginning. Their record label, Ardent Records, had signed a distribution deal with Stax Records, which seemed like a good idea at the time. But Stax was having financial troubles, and when Big Star's albums were ready for release, they barely made it into stores. The distribution was so poor that even in their hometown of Memphis, you couldn't find their records. Radio stations that wanted to play the song couldn't find copies to give away to listeners. Record stores couldn't order enough copies to meet what little demand existed. The frustration was unbearable for the band members. Here they were, creating what they knew was great music, and nobody could actually buy it. Chris Bell, one of the founding members and co-writers with Chilton, left the band before their second album was even released. The third album was recorded but didn't come out until 1978, years after it was made. And by then, Big Star had long since broken up. By 1975, what should have been one of the biggest bands of the decade had dissolved into nothing, and September Girls was left to be discovered by future generations of musicians who would cite it as a major influence. The crazy thing is that some people call Big Star the Memphis Beatles. When you listen to September Girls, you can hear why. There's that same melodic brilliance, that same ability to make something that sounds simple but is actually quite sophisticated. The harmonies are perfectly constructed. The guitar work creates this shimmering backdrop that sounds effortless, but required real skill to achieve. Alex Chilton had been a teen star with the Box Tops in the late 60s. Scoring a huge hit with The Letter when he was just 16 years old. He could have kept making commercial music and probably had a long career as a mainstream artist, but he wanted to create something more meaningful and artistically satisfying. The result was Big Star, and this song represents everything they did right. If you heard it on the radio in 1974 and loved it, you probably haven't heard it since unless you went looking for it. Time to rediscover it. Number 9, Magic by Pilot. It's magic, you know. This Scottish band gave us one of the catchiest songs of 1975, and it shot up to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. For a few months, you couldn't escape it. That piano line at the beginning was instantly recognizable, and the chorus had this hypnotic quality that made it stick in your head for days. Pilot was basically a studio project led by David Payton and Billy Lyle, two musicians who'd briefly been in the Bay City Rollers before that band hit it big. They had this knack for crafting perfect pop songs, and Magic was the culmination of their songwriting partnership. The song was inspired by Payton watching a sunrise on Blackford Hill in Edinburgh, and he wanted to capture that sense of wonder and natural beauty in music. What made the song special was the production. Alan Parsons, who'd worked on Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, produced the track, and his touch is evident throughout. Magic had layers of keyboards, harmonies that sounded effortless, and production that was slick without being overdone. The song was about the magic of falling in love, but it never got too heavy or sentimental. It just bounced along with this wonderful energy that felt both sophisticated and accessible. The The band managed one more decent-sized hit with January, which actually topped the charts in the UK and Australia, but it only made it to number 87 in America. Nothing else came close to Magic's success in the United States. They eventually dissolved, and David Payton went on to work with bands like the Alan Parsons Project, which made sense given that Parsons had produced their debut album. But for that one moment in 1975, they absolutely owned the airwaves. If you were listening to Top 40 radio that year, you heard this song constantly. It was on AM radio, FM radio, playing in stores and restaurants. Somewhere along the way, programmers just stopped playing it. Maybe it sounded too light compared to the rock that dominated classic hits formats. Maybe it just got lost in the shuffle of thousands of 70s songs competing for airtime. Either way, it deserves another listen. Number 8. Driver's Seat by Sniff and the Tears. This is one of those songs that sounds like it should have been absolutely huge. Released in 1978, it reached number 15 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1979, and it had this moody, atmospheric quality that set it apart from everything else on the radio. Paul Roberts' voice had this haunting quality, and the production was layers of guitars and synthesizers that created this driving, hypnotic rhythm. The British band Sniff and the Tears was essentially a vehicle for songwriter Paul Roberts. The song itself had actually been written and demoed back in 1973 for a band called Moon, but that group couldn't get a record deal and fell apart. A few years later, drummer Luigi Salvoni listened to those old demos and heard something special. He contacted Roberts, who by this point had moved to France and was concentrating on his career as a painter, and convinced him to give music another try. They signed with Chiswick Records, a small independent label known for pub rock, and recorded their debut album in 1978. Driver's Seat was the opening track, and from the very first drum beat, it grabbed your attention and didn't let go. The song builds and builds, never really exploding, but maintaining this constant tension that pulls you in. It's the perfect late-night driving song, the kind of track that makes you want to just keep going and see where the road takes you. Despite the success of Driver's Seat, the band never had another hit in America. They kept making music, and Paul Roberts continued writing and recording for years afterward, even experiencing a career revival in 1991 when the song was used in a European advertising campaign and went to number 1 in the Netherlands more than a decade after its original release. But here in the States, radio moved on after that one hit. The song did better in Europe and has maintained a cult following, partly thanks to its use in movies like Boogie Nights in 1997. But for people who were paying close attention to the charts in 1979, it's been largely forgotten. If you remember it, you probably remember exactly where you were when you first heard it, because it had that kind of impact. That opening with just the drums, then the guitar gradually joining in, then the vocals coming in with that mysterious quality. It was different from everything else on the radio at the time. Number 7. Thunder Island by Jay Ferguson. Jay Ferguson had quite a career before he went solo. He'd been a founding member of Spirit, one of the more adventurous rock bands of the late 60s. Spirit mixed rock with jazz and psychedelia in ways that were genuinely innovative. And they had a modest hit with I Got a Line on You, but the band struggled with internal conflicts and eventually broke up. Ferguson then formed Joe Gunna in the early 70s with some other former Spirit members. That band had a hit with Run 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 in 1972, but they too eventually fell apart. But it was his solo career that gave him his biggest hit. Thunder Island came out in 1977 and climbed all the way to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. After years of being in bands that showed promise but never quite broke through commercially, Ferguson finally had a genuine hit single. The song had this tropical, breezy feel that was perfect for summer. The guitar riff was memorable, and Ferguson's vocals had just the right amount of laid-back cool. The whole thing felt like a beach party, like you should be sitting on a dock somewhere with the sun setting and good friends around. The production was clean without being sterile, and there was something in the arrangement that just made you feel good. Radio loved it, and it became one of those songs that defined the summer of 1977 for a lot of people. Ferguson tried to follow it up with other songs, and he did have a few minor hits. Shakedown Cruise made it to number 31 later in 1977, so he wasn't quite a one-hit wonder. But nothing matched Thunder Island's success or its staying power. He eventually moved into composing music for television and films, and he's been quite successful in that field, working on shows and movies throughout the 80s and beyond. But for people who were listening to radio in 1977, Thunder Island is still that perfect summer song that brings back memories of a simpler time. It doesn't get played much anymore, which is a shame because it still sounds great. Put it on and you're instantly transported back to that summer feeling, even if it's the middle of winter. Number 6. You Take My Breath Away by Rex Smith.
You take my breath away. You're every song.
Rex Smith was a teen idol in the late 70s, and this power ballad from 1979 showcased exactly why teenage girls went crazy for him. The song hit number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it had this soaring, romantic quality that made it perfect for slow dances at school dances or listening to late at night on your transistor radio. Smith had actually started in music theater, and you can hear that theatrical quality in his vocal delivery. He doesn't just sing the song, he performs it. The production is lush with strings and synthesizers, very much in the style of late 70s pop ballads. It's unabashedly sentimental, and that's part of its charm. This was a song that let you feel those big emotions without irony or cynicism. Rex Smith tried to maintain a career in both music and acting throughout the 80s and beyond, but he never had another hit like this one. For a lot of people who were teenagers in 1979, this song brings back very specific memories of first loves and heartbreak. It's pure late 70s emotion, captured perfectly in 3.5 minutes, and it's been unjustly forgotten by most radio stations.
Oh, you take my breath away.
Number 5. Sentimental Lady by Bob Welch. Before Fleetwood Mac became the massive commercial force they were in the late 70s, Bob Welch was a crucial member of the band during their earlier years. When he left to pursue a solo career, he took with him a song he'd originally recorded with Fleetwood Mac and re-recorded it. The result was this beautiful, gentle track that hit number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1977. The song is a slow waltz with Welch's smooth vocals gliding over acoustic guitars and subtle orchestration. Christine McVie and Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac actually came back to help on the new version, singing backup vocals and adding their instrumental touches. It's a love song, but not an aggressive one. It's tender and nostalgic, the kind of song that creates a mood rather than demanding attention. Bob Welch had a few more hits in the late 70s, including Ebony Eyes and Precious Love, so he wasn't exactly a one-hit wonder. But Sentimental Lady was his biggest success, and somehow it's been largely forgotten. Classic rock stations tend to focus on his more upbeat material, and soft rock stations seem to have moved away from this kind of gentle ballad. But if you loved it in 1977, hearing it again will take you right back. Number 4. Miracles by Jefferson Starship. Jefferson Starship was riding high in the mid-70s after evolving from Jefferson Airplane. This song, released in 1975, was different from their earlier, more psychedelic material. It was a smooth, sensual ballad written and sung by Marty Balin, and it climbed all the way to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song has this dreamy quality with layers of keyboards and guitars creating this lush soundscape. Balin's voice is soft and intimate, and the whole production feels like floating. It was a huge departure from the harder rock that Jefferson Airplane had been known for. But it worked. The song resonated with audiences who were ready for something a little more mellow after the intensity of the late 60s and early 70s. Jefferson Starship continued having hits throughout the late 70s and into the 80s, eventually becoming just Starship and scoring massive hits like We Built This City. But Miracles represented a specific moment in their evolution. And it's a beautiful piece of mid-70s soft rock that deserves to be remembered alongside their bigger, later hits. It's romantic without being schmaltzy, and it still sounds great today. Number 3. Living Next Door to Alice by Smokie. This British band scored a huge hit in Europe with this song in 1976. And it did pretty well in America too, though not quite as massively. The song tells a story that anybody who's ever loved someone from afar can relate to. The narrator has been living next to Alice for 24 years, secretly in love with her, and now she's moving away, and he realizes he never told her how he felt. The chorus is incredibly catchy, and there's actually a call and response element to it that became famous at concerts. The band had this accessible, soft rock sound that made them popular across multiple audiences. They weren't trying to be cool or cutting edge. They were just making well-crafted pop rock songs that told relatable stories.
24 years just waiting for a chance to tell her.
Smokie had several hits in the UK and Europe, but never really broke through in America the way they hoped. Living Next Door to Alice remains their best-known song internationally, but even it doesn't get much airplay anymore in the States. It's one of those songs that was everywhere for a while and then just faded away, probably because it didn't fit neatly into any particular format. But it's a great song with a story that still resonates, and it deserves another chance. Number 2, 20th Century Boy by T-Rex. Mark Bolan and T-Rex were glam rock pioneers alongside David Bowie, and they had a huge following, especially in the UK. This song from 1973 has one of the most iconic guitar riffs of the entire decade. It's driving, it's powerful, and it's impossible not to move to. In America, T-Rex's biggest hit was Bang a Gong, Get It On from 1971, which went to number 10. But 20th Century Boy is arguably an even better song. It's raw, more energetic, and showcases everything that made glam rock exciting. Bolan's vocals have this swagger to them, and the whole song just oozes cool. The song didn't chart as high in America as it did in Britain, where it went to number 3, but it got plenty of radio play, and people who were into rock music in 1973 definitely heard it. Over the years, it's been used in movies and commercials, which has kept it somewhat alive in the public consciousness. But it's not a regular on classic rock radio, which is a shame because that riff alone should guarantee it regular rotation. If you remember loving it when it first came out, listening to it now will remind you just how powerful it was. Number 1, Beach Baby by The First Class. This is one of the most unique songs of 1974. It hit number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it's basically a mini rock opera about beach culture. Tony Burrows, who'd already been part of several hit-making studio groups, led this project, and what they created was something special. The song has multiple sections that flow into each other, with different vocal styles and musical arrangements throughout. It's nostalgic for the early 60s beach culture, but it was made in the mid-70s, so there's this layer of looking back at looking back. The production is elaborate, with orchestral elements and rock instrumentation combining in ways that shouldn't work but absolutely do. The first class was essentially a one-off project. They never had another hit, and Beach Baby remains their only legacy. But what a legacy. It's a song that could only have come from the 70s, when producers and musicians were willing to take risks and create something genuinely different. The fact that it was a top 5 hit shows that audiences were ready for something unusual. It hasn't aged perfectly, and maybe that's why it's not played much anymore. But it's still a fascinating piece of 70s pop that deserves to be remembered. These 10 songs represent just a small fraction of the incredible music that came out of the 70s and somehow got left behind. Each one was a hit in its time, connecting with audiences and climbing the charts. They were part of the soundtrack of people's lives. But radio formats changed, playlists tightened, and these songs became casualties of programming decisions made by people who never lived through the era. The beautiful thing about music from this era is that it was created before the algorithms and the focus groups took over completely. Artists and producers were taking chances, trying new things, and audiences were open to being surprised. That's why the 70s produced such a diverse range of music. Not everything worked, but when it did, it was often spectacular. If you enjoyed this trip back through some forgotten classics, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll keep exploring the music that defined our generation and bringing back songs that deserve another moment in the spotlight. What 70s songs do you wish you heard more often? Drop a comment and let us know. These songs may have been forgotten by radio, but they're still out there waiting to be rediscovered. And they're still just as awesome as they were back then.